evening, everyone. This is Osceola Thomas, and I'm presenting this evening Kingdom Mastermind, where we're building the kingdom of God, one family at a time. Those of you that were on last week, you know, we shared with you a series of strategies last week, and those strategies focus specifically on you looking over and getting a financial picture of where you are when it comes to your finances. That's what we did last week, to make sure that you understood how much debt you owed to your creditors and that you could put a number to each of those categories of debt. And so this week we're coming to review that homework. And so the first thing I want to talk about or discuss is let's review your numbers. And I also want to share this. This is the caveat. This session is being recorded. So let's review your numbers. So when we look at the homework from last week, I asked you to break out your debt or break out your monthly expenses by category. So the B category represented bills, the U category represented utilities, and the P category represented your personal spending. So how many expenses did you have in each category? That's the question I want you to write down. This is a journal, so you're creating your own workbook or your own journal. How many expenses did you have in each category? I know personally for me, in the bills category, I had few expenses because I have minimal debt. Utilities, I've had probably the average number of utilities that you have, water, electricity, cable, internet, etc. But personal spending was a heavy category for me. I noticed that there was a lot of spending on dining out, on eating. That was probably the largest category, was dining out expenses. So take a look at your categories and see where most of your spending, was, whether it was in the B category, the U category, or the P category. Does anybody want to share? If you do, drop it in the chat. So I asked you to look at 3 months of your credit card statements and 3 months of your banking statements. This is going to show you where your money is going. And when you do a 1 month review, that first month should have a sense of recurring expenses. And recurring expenses are those things that take place every month. That's your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, your car payment, your car insurance, groceries. These are ongoing bills that occur every month. So that's a 1 month review. But then looking at it from a 3 month perspective, that's why I asked you to do 3 months, because by monitoring 3 months, you should have gotten a sense of your other expenses, entertainment, dining out, your beauty appointments, your grooming, and other things that you conveniently charge on your credit card at random intervals. So looking at 3 months, you're going to see more than just your monthly costs. You're going to see those hair appointments, those nails appointments, the massages. You're going to see the lunches that you take. So it's going to give you a snapshot by looking at 1 quarter of your credit card statements and your bank statements. You're going to see exactly how you're utilizing your dollars, and if you're utilizing those dollars in a way that's going to maximize your bottom line. So now, when you look at your 3 months, what was the issue? Did you have a spend too much problem, or was it a don't make enough issue? Those are 2 separate issues. When you looked at 3 months, did it show you that, wow, I spend too much? Or was it a I don't make enough issue? And here's how you can tell which one it was. If most of your money in the B and U categories, you likely have an income issue and not a don't spend too much issue. So if most of your dollars were allocated in the bills and utilities category, then that means you have a don't make enough money issue. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to look at that. If most of your money was spent in the BU category, that's not a spend too much issue. That's a don't make enough issue. So if you're barely making enough to take you from paycheck to paycheck, and all of your money is going to the bill collectors or creditors for bills and utilities or fixed expenses, then you have a don't make enough issue. And we're going to talk about that when we get to the week of supplemental income. I'm going to talk to you about home-based businesses and how to generate additional income so you can improve that bottom line and have money to grow your saving and investments accounts. But that's going to be a couple weeks down the road. So if you realize that you had a spend too much issue, then you can always redirect those funds. But here's what I want you to think about. If after you satisfy your bills and your utilities and your personal spending, and you still have some dollars or surplus left over, then that's great, because that means you have a positive beginning for your monthly savings. So now, if you found out that you did not have any money left over to start your savings account, here's the goal. I want you to write this down. I want you to prioritize your luxuries and minimize everything else. Prioritize your luxuries and minimize everything else. So your bills, your utilities, and then those things that you get some enjoyment out of, I want you to prioritize those. Even when it comes to your monthly expenses, if you have several subscriptions, you have Netflix, you have Hulu, you have Prime, you have all of these different subscriptions, I want you to really say to yourself, are all of these necessary? So start prioritizing line by line as you went through your credit card and your banking statements. I want you to go line by line and ask yourself if everything that you see in each of those categories, are they necessary? And then identify where you can make cuts to your money out expenses. Remember, money in represents all of your take-home pay, all of your direct deposits, all of your side hustle money, everything that's coming into your bank account, that's your money in. Anything that's taking money out of your bank account is your money out expenses. So identify where you can make cuts to your money out expenses. So this may sound simple, but most people do not take the time to review where their money is going, and they do not take time to itemize where their dollars are going so that they can make sure that my dollars, wherever they're going, that's a need or it's a luxury that I can't do without. So I want you to look at that and go line by line and see where you can make the cuts or the expense for those expenses. If anybody has any questions while I'm going forth, just put your hand up in the chat and I'll stop and I'll answer that question. So now you need to decide what day-to-day spending is necessary and unavoidable. You know what's unavoidable. You need gas, you know, you need groceries. Whatever other day-to-day expenses are unavoidable, you need to highlight those on your statements and on your credit card statements. So on your bank statements, your credit card statements, highlight those things that are necessary and unavoidable. Any questions before we go into the separate accounts? I'm going to take some time here and I'm going to look at the chat. Where would I put gas, putting gas in my car? So that would definitely be a bill. I spend too much and I don't make enough. Okay, so we're going to deal with that as well. We talk about a home-based business. And someone said, I spend too much in one area, personal spending. Okay, reading the statements was an eye-opener. Excellent, I'm glad. Okay, so now we've come face to face with looking at 3 months. And let me just say this as a testimony. What I'm sharing with you, I know works because I just posted it on social media. My credit score, I posted, was 800 plus. And then I just received notification via email that my score went up even 13 points higher than what it was. All of this was in a 30-day time frame. So I'm giving you an infrastructure that I want you to put in place so that it can help you transition to that next level with your finances. So the first thing was to look at those 3 months and to look at where your dollars were being spent in what category. You did that. Okay, now you're going to look at those same statements and you're going to decide with a fine-tooth comb, do I need this? And here's the litmus test. I want you to ask yourself, if my card was to be stolen and I had to get a replacement card, would I re-up or sign back up for all of the things that my credit card is currently attached to? So would I sign back up for that Spotify? Would I sign back up for that magazine? Would I sign back up for Netflix? I want you to go through every line item to see where you can make some sacrifices, because we're going to talk next week about a debt elimination plan, but you're looking at all of this. So now let's talk about creating separate accounts, because this is needful. Separate your dollars or your funds into different bank accounts so you can see clearly. How many have more than one bank account? And put your number in the chat. How many people here have more than one bank account? How many people here have more than 2 bank accounts? Okay, so the goal is, I want you to separate your dollars into different bank accounts so you can see clearly. Next, I want you to choose the right banks for your checking and savings. Most of us don't know how to pick a good bank, and that's no fault of your own. I want to give you the criteria that you should look at when you're choosing a financial institution to place your dollars. So checking accounts. Your checking account, understand that your checking account is the backbone of your entire financial system, your checking account. So it's very important to understand that. Your checking account is where all of your P category money will go. So that includes all of your salaries, your direct deposits, your side hustles. All of your money will go to your primary checking account. Did everybody hear me? All of your direct deposits, all of your salary, all of your side hustles, all of your money through direct deposit will go into your primary checking account. Your checking account number 2 is where the money for your B and U categories will be placed. So all of the money will go into your primary checking, and from that primary checking, your bills and utility costs will then be sent into that second checking account to satisfy all of your bills and your utilities. Are you following me? We're setting up a system. So all the money that you receive, I'm getting some feedback. Can someone please mute themselves? So all of your money that you receive will go into that primary checking or checking number 1. And then that checking number 2, funds from checking number 1 will funnel into that second checking account to satisfy all of your bills and utilities, your monthly fixed expenses. The remainder will stay in that primary checking account number 1. Any questions? So checking account number 2, this account is for your monthly expenses. It should not be linked to your debit card. Remember that. Your checking account number 1, if they ask you, do you want a debit card? Yes. Checking account number 2, I do not want a debit card. Why? Because if checking account number 2 is the account where all of your bills and utilities money will go, if it's connected to a debit card, you may be tempted to do what? Swipe. And that could mean swiping into your bills and your utilities money, and we don't want that. So checking account number 1 will have a debit card. Checking account number 2, no debit card. Any questions about that? And your second checking account for your bills and utilities, it will be automated. And we're going to talk about automation. So you want to automate that account unless you have a cashback or rewards credit card. Now, why am I saying that? Remember, I shared with you last week, the goal is to use your credit card to pay for all of your bills and your utilities, unless the creditor does not accept credit cards. So you may not be able to pay your rent or mortgage or your car payment. If the creditor accepts credit cards, then that's great. But all the rest of your expenses will be linked to a credit card where you receive cash back or rewards. If you don't have a credit card that gives you cash back or rewards, then simply automate that account and let the checking account satisfy those expenses. Any question? I want to make sure you're following this. Now, how do I select an online checking account? And why did I say online checking account? Because online checking accounts are going to give you the best option for your dollars. Now, if you have a relationship with a brick and mortar, you want to make sure that with that brick and mortar, you want to go through these bullets that I have here. Ask them, does my checking account have any fees? You have certain checking accounts where if you don't keep a minimum balance, they charge you a fee every month. So you want to inquire about fees. You want to make sure your account doesn't have any minimums, that there's no fee for overdraft protection, that your account has free bill pay. You're able to pay your bills through that account at no additional cost. Do I receive free checks? What about automatic transfers? And do I receive unlimited reimbursement of any ATM usage? You may want to take a picture or a screenshot of that slide, because that's exactly what you're going to research when it comes to your online checking account. So remember this important fact. This is very important. What are you receiving? What are you receiving from your checking account? And I'm sorry, someone just text they couldn't get in, so I wanted to make sure I looked at that, so please forgive me. But remember this one important fact. One overdraft fee will wipe out your entire interest for 1 year. Let me repeat that. One overdraft fee wipes out your interest for the entire year. So what are banks charging overdraft fees now? Is it $25, $30? Well, think about this. If the bank is giving you 0.01%, which is a piece of a penny, it's a piece of a penny. That's the interest that they're giving you on your money for 1 year, 0.01%. So if they're charging you $25 to $30 in an overdraft fee, guess what? All the interest that you accumulated for your money in that year is gone. So you want to find a bank that doesn't charge anything for overdraft protection. So here are some online checking accounts to consider. And you may want to take a screenshot or a picture of this slide as well. So Schwab has a high interest checking account. And here it is. I gave you the link. Also, Capital One 360 checking account. These are all online checking accounts. So if you do a lot of cash deposits, online might not be the best option for you. But if you don't do a lot of cash deposits, I don't do a lot of cash deposits. My income is through direct deposit. If it's not through direct deposit, it's through check, and I can take a picture of the check and have the check transferred into my account. So this would be a great option for me when it comes to checking. So I want you to take a look at these two checking accounts, because these two checking accounts meet all of the bulleted items that we shared in the prior slide. So you can typically get a checking account with no fee and no minimum accounts if you do direct deposit. So even if you have a checking account, ask them, do you have any fees associated with your account, and are there any minimums? And could that be avoided if you did direct deposit? If the answer is no, then you really need to consider the online checking account option. Now, I put this here because in doing the research, Schwab, I just shared with you, I gave you their link. Schwab rolled out a phenomenal high interest checking account years ago that offered unrivaled benefits for free. Check them out. So I want you to look at that Schwab's checking account, but you can also go to the sites and look as well. So here are the two sites that I use because they are ranked as two of the best sites when it comes to anything financial. So Bankrate and NerdWallet, those are two sites, and I gave you the links there. And these two sites, they rate checking accounts. So you can look at Bankrate for the best checking accounts for 2022, and NerdWallet gives you the best checking accounts rankings as well. So those are the two sites. So I want you to look at these sites because, again, we're creating our financial buckets. We're creating our structure to receive our dollars. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our checking accounts. So we want to choose the best checking account to receive our money because our goal is to keep our money and build our wealth. So we don't want to give our dollars away in fees every month. So this is important to note. If you need to transfer money, if you decide to open an online account and you need to transfer money from one account to your new online account, your new bank can help with the transfer. So here's what I recommend. Open with a small amount of money in case you have any automatic transfers that are still trying to draw from your old account. So leave some dollars in your old account in case there are automatic transfers that you set up but didn't know about. And give yourself a 60-day calendar reminder to close that account. So you can monitor that account for 60 days. If you saw something that came through 30 days, then you can notify that creditor and give them your new financial institution's information. But after 60 days, you should see if you have any monthly automatic transfers coming through. Notify those creditors and then close that account out. So give yourself a 60-day calendar window. Now I'm going to go into savings accounts, but before I do that, because those were checking accounts, I'm going to look into the chat to see if there were any questions. Sister Tiffany said, to be honest, I am behind in everything. Well, that's all right, Sister Tiffany. We want to make sure you get up to speed and that you are creating a financial structure to change that narrative. Sister Vivian said, I struggle with homework, but I try and I will continue to work on it based on the instruction you provide. Amen. Personal spending was for me extreme. Sister Centavia, and that was the same for me. Reading statements were an eye opener. Okay. We answered, spend too much in one area, two bank. Okay, so most people here have two bank accounts. Sister Tiffany says she has 4. Sister Ruby, very good. Sister Ruby has 5. All direct deposit will go. Okay, very good. That's exactly right. Would Cash App count as a bank? No, Cash App is not a bank. Cash App is it's a cash portal. I think it's either 30 or 35. Oh, so Sister Tiffany said her bank charges $30 or $35 for overdraft. So that means not only are you losing all your interest, but you're still paying them additional. And you're paying the bank additional money so they can use your money to lend it and make interest and then charge you a fee. Okay. So we talked about the checking accounts. Let's look at the savings. In order to start saving, and here's what's something that we have to overcome. We can engage these 10 weeks of instruction, 10 weeks of strategies. But if our mindset doesn't change, then guess what? We'll just come to class, hear this information, but after it's over, we'll still go back to our same ways. So here's what I want to share with you. You can't save until you educate yourself about where and how you are spending your money. You cannot save until you educate yourself about where your money is going and how you're spending it. Your job is to make sure you give every dollar a job. And every dollar's job is to make sure that it's making more of itself or replicating itself. Every dollar should have a job description. Give every dollar a job. The two purposes of savings, look at this, is to see you through tough times and give you the ability to invest. Remember last week, I think it was what, 70% of Americans say they didn't have $400 in case of an emergency. If a $400 emergency came up, they couldn't afford to take care of it. $400. So savings is to give you the ability to see you through your tough times and to give you the ability to invest so that you can build wealth. Next bullet, you have to move from saving to spend to saving to make money. Most of us have savings account, but that account is simply there in case I need money for something. It's not there with the mindset that this is a long-term financial strategy and it's only going to be used to fund my long-term goals or emergencies. We leave it there for convenience, and when we need it, we just tap into it. We have to transition ourselves from that mindset, from saving to spend to saving to make money. Next bullet says, without learning how to save, you won't be able to invest or pay down effectively. Now watch this. Without learning how to save, you won't be able to invest or pay down your debt effectively. And this is true no matter what your financial position. You have doctors right now that are drowning in debt. They might make $500,000 a year, but they live in multi-million-dollar a year homes. They have liability insurance policies. They have car insurance for all of these new cars, student loan debt. They're, excuse me, they're drowning in debt. So it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, one statistic said that 70% of people that retire from the NBA and the NFL file bankruptcy 5 years after leaving professional athletics. I think that's what the research, I think it's 70% within 5 years are bankrupt. How are you a multi-millionaire and within 5 years of leaving the NFL or the NBA, you're bankrupt? It doesn't matter how much money you have if your mindset is to spend it. We have to transition from that mindset. So let's look at our savings account. We talked about checking accounts. Let's look at savings accounts. This is your emergency savings account. So account number one, I want you to write this down. So right now we have 2 checking accounts. We have one checking account to receive all of our dollars, a second checking account for bills and utilities. Now we have a savings account. Savings account number one is for our emergencies. It's our emergency savings account. The goal of this account is to save a minimum of 3 months of your fixed expenses. The goal of savings account number one is to save 3 months of your fixed expenses. What are fixed expenses? That's your rent or your mortgage, your utilities, your car payment, your car insurance, and your groceries. The necessities, the bare bone necessities. I want you to write down the dollar amount for those items there. Your rent and your mortgage, your utilities, car payment, car insurance, and groceries. I want you to calculate those. Now, an emergency fund, look at this. An emergency fund brings stability to your financial life. Instead of panicking at unexpected expenses, you will have a small pot of money on hand ready for use. That's what an emergency fund does. It's there in case of an emergency. So what constitutes an emergency? An emergency is defined as, and I just wrote some things here, you could think of some other emergencies, a root canal, car repairs, the house needs a new roof, the water heater goes. That happened to me just before we sold our house. Had to get a tankless water heater. We were in the process of fixing up our home, and then all of a sudden the water heater burst and we started seeing water come from the attic through to the ceiling. And we said, oh, look, we had to call somebody out. Your water heater burst. And if you don't move it from here, it's going to happen again. We advise you to get a tankless water heater, $4,400. Also, job loss. What happens if you lose your place of employment? You don't have the security of that paycheck. You need to have a minimum of 3 months of your fixed expenses for emergencies. The expert says you really should have 6 months, but we're going to start with 3, and you can always graduate to 6, but let's start somewhere. The goal is to get started. So for this goal, you will need to identify the total of your categories, B and U costs, bills and utilities, each month, and multiply it by 3. That's your initial emergency fund. So remember, we said rent or mortgage, your utilities, car payment, car insurance, groceries, bare bone. Whatever that dollar amount is, multiply it by 3, and that's your emergency savings goal. Make sure you write that down. That's your emergency savings goal. Now, I gave you an example. Let's look at this. John's budget of all monthly expenses has his spending at $4,000 a month. His necessary monthly spending, necessary are the categories I named: rent, mortgage, utilities, car payment, car insurance, groceries, is $3,200. Multiplying $3,200 times 3 gave John an emergency savings goal of $9,600. How much do you have left over each month to put away in your emergency savings account? So you know what your emergency savings goal is. So I want you to write that number down somewhere big. Next, we have savings goal number 2. So this is our 4th bank account. We have 2 checking accounts. We have a savings account for emergencies. And now we have our goals saving. I call it goals saving because that's exactly what it's for. It's for your goals. So this is for your long-term goals. These goals can be things like traveling. Maybe you want to travel every year and see the world, see some of God's beautiful natural landscape. Or you're saving up for a wedding or that dream house. So these are long-term goals. So write down your saving goal or goals. And I want you to take a black Sharpie and write that goal, your primary goal. Let's start with 1 goal. We can always graduate to 2. I want you to write it in black Sharpie across your bank statement every month so that it keeps you focused on what you're saving for. This is your dream savings account or your goals savings account. Now, here's the questions I want you to ask when you start creating your goals savings account. In how many months do you plan to achieve this goal? How many months do you plan to achieve this goal? If it's a wedding, is your wedding 2 years away? If it's a dream vacation, are you looking to do it next year or the year after? How many months do you have to achieve this goal? Next, I want you to put a dollar sign to it. What is the total cost for this goal? Now I want you to divide that total cost by the number of months that you plan to achieve this goal. Simple math. But when we take time to actually do the math and put narrative to the math, it helps keep us focused. And then we begin to see that, look, if I do this in increments or bite-sized pieces, I can actually tackle this or digest this. Here's another example. So Joanne wants to take a dream trip to Paris. Her travel agent told her that the trip and airfare will cost her $4,000. She wants to take the trip in September of next year. So she has 12 months to save for her dream vacation. How much does Joanne need to place in her goals savings account each month to be ready to travel in 12 months? So you can see here, we did the math. The $4,000 divided by the 12 months that she has to save, she has to put into her account $333.33 monthly. I decided to round that up and said Joanne will need to put away $334 each month to be ready to travel in September. I want you to do the same math. Whatever that dream goal is, if it's a house, what is the down payment for that house? If it's a vacation. So start thinking about your dream goals and start putting the math to it. Now let's look at this. The best option that meets these criteria are online savings accounts. Online savings accounts are the best option for meeting these criteria here. Look at this. You want to make sure that any online bank that you're using is insured by the FDIC. And when you look at Bankrate and NerdWallet for checking accounts and for savings accounts, you will see that their banks are FDIC insured. When it comes to a savings account, you want to make sure that it's giving you a high interest rate. Most brick and mortar banks, and I'm sharing this with you because going through this with you, I'm actually transferring my money from a brick and mortar savings account to an online savings account because the interest rates are higher. So you want to look for a high interest rate. Next, you want to look at what banks require the lowest deposit to open the account and to earn the advertised interest rates. So some banks will say, in order to get this interest rate, you have to satisfy a minimum deposit of whatever it is. So you want to look at what banks require the lowest deposit to receive the earned advertised interest rate. You also want to use an online bank because it prevents instant access. Remember I shared with you, some of us are saving to spend. Well, if your money is in an online savings account, it's not as easy to access as it is with a brick and mortar. So you don't want accessibility when it comes to a savings account because this is a long-term goal. You don't plan on spending it until you achieve that goal. Next, the balance requirement is 0. That means no matter how much you save with them, you will earn the advertised interest rate if you have any money in the account. So you want to make sure that the balance requirement for you to earn the interest rate that they're advertising is a 0 balance, so that regardless of how much money you have in the bank, you still receive that same interest rate. Now, I've given you here several online banks to consider, and the first 2 receive great reviews. But again, I'm not going to tell you which bank to choose. You have to do your homework and choose the best bank for you. But I want you to review all of them and see if they're not giving you better interest rates than your current savings account. If there are no fees associated, that's what you want. So if you want to take a picture of that or a screenshot, by all means, please feel free to do so. But I want you to look at these online savings account options as you're making your decision. And the top sites, again, for online savings accounts, if you want to look at how the sites rank online savings account, Bankrate has looked at savings accounts and put them in ranking order. NerdWallet has done the same thing, and Investopedia. So these 3 sites here, you can look at these 3 sites and see how the bank accounts rank. What's the #1 bank account? And they will tell you based on what criteria. But the majority of these accounts will have no fees and they will give you higher interest rates than your brick and mortar. That's what you want because this is a savings goal. Now I'm going to talk about how to fund these savings accounts, because many of you are probably saying, well, Osceola, you're saying we need to save this money for an emergency account. We need to save this money for long-term goals, but where is this money coming from? Based on me looking at 3 months of my financials, I don't see how I'm going to generate any money. So now we're going to talk about that. But before I do that, let me look here in the chat. I think I have one question here in the chat. Let me go back. Okay, Sister Ruby Williams, 2 of my accounts are with the same bank. Now, I'll share this with you. So opening a new bank account may not be convenient, but you really need to do a comparative analysis to make sure you're receiving the best bang for your buck. And if they're charging you fees and they're using your money to grow their wealth, you need to consider a bank that's going to charge you no fees. And why would these online banks charge no fees? Because they have no overhead. And they understand that when you give them your money, they're investing your money to make money, so they don't have to charge you fees. Brick and mortar really doesn't have to charge you fees because they're making large amounts of interest using your money, so they really don't have to charge you fees, but they do that because they want to make more than enough while you're not making enough. So how to fund your savings accounts? Any questions about the online institutions, please? Okay, so how to fund these accounts? I'm going to ask the question, and you could put it in the chat. Did you have a surplus after you deducted categories B and U and P from your take-home income? So when you looked at all of the money that was coming in, your take-home pay, your direct deposits, your side hustle, etc., all of the money that came into your account on a monthly basis, when you deducted your bills, your utilities, and your personal expenses, did you see that you had a surplus? That's the question I want to ask you. And some may say, well, no, I didn't have a surplus. But if you notice that you did a lot of spending in the P category, then you did have a surplus, because some of that you can certainly minimize. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat here. Somebody in the chat just said, no surplus. And Sister Sharnetta said some, not much. Sister Tiffany, I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so Sister Tiffany, when you look at the money that comes into your bank account on a monthly basis, after you pay all your bills, after you pay your utilities, and after you take out all your personal spending, whatever that may be, did you see that there was still some money left over in that account? Or did the account come to zero at the end of the month? If the account wasn't at zero at the end of the month, that means you had a surplus, you had something left over. So whatever that number was, I want you to write it down. Write it down, because this is going to help fund your savings account. Write that number down. That's the surplus that you had left over every month. Now, secondly, remember I asked you to bring the amount that you save from cutting unnecessary fees and negotiating lower rates. Last week, I asked you to do that. I said, when you go through your statements, your bank statements, and your credit card statements, see where you can lower your fees or negotiate a lower rate. Even if you had to call and get new insurance quotes, maybe you could lower your insurance. Maybe you can call the phone company and say, look, I want to go to paperless billing. They will reduce your cell phone bill. Maybe you can call Netflix or Hulu and ask for a cheaper subscription. Wherever you saw that you were able to make cuts or negotiate fees or lower rates, I asked you to do that last week. How much did you see that you were able to save? Write that number down. So those two numbers, I want you to write down. Now, we can get even more creative. I want you to go line by line again with your bank statements and your credit card statements. Your bank statements and your credit card statements, that's your financial Bible. Those two documents right there. I want you to ask the question, am I contractually or legally obligated to pay this expense? If you have rent to pay, that's a contract. You're legally obligated. If you have a mortgage to pay, you're legally obligated to pay it. So ask yourself, am I contractually or legally obligated to pay this expense? And you know, if you signed a contract, you signed a contract for your car payment. So if it's not a contractual obligation or legal obligation, then you have some wiggle room. So if the answer is no, consider removing it from your budget and put those dollars towards your savings account, because now we're saving for a purpose. Let me see, somebody else here in the chat just asked a question. Let's see. So Tiffany said, oh, okay, it may be very little. Once it zeroes out, it will be just that until I either add money or get a deposit. Okay, so Sister Tiffany, I want you to, let me go back. I want you to focus on what I just shared. Go line by line. If it's not a legal contract or an obligation, really consider, do I need to take on this expense, or can I take the money from this expense and put it toward my long-term savings goal or my emergency savings account? And let me put it in priority. Your emergency savings account should take precedence first over your goals savings account. So while you're putting money in your goals savings account, you should focus more of an effort on building that emergency account, because emergencies will occur. So far, how many bank accounts do we have in the chat? Let's see if everybody's paying attention. How many bank accounts have we set up so far with this system? I'm going to give everybody a chance to respond in the chat. Okay, very good, very good. Everybody gets a star. We have 4 accounts. That first account is your checking account. That's where all your money will go. That second checking account will be a sub account of the first, and it will receive all of your bills and utility money. So what will be left over in that first checking account is your personal spending. That's the one that will have the debit card. The second checking account won't have a debit card. And that second checking account, remember this, that second checking account will be automated so that bills are paid. And make sure when you automate it, that it's automated along, or that it runs concurrent with your payroll cycles. So make sure that half of your bills are being paid with your first check, half with your second check. You don't want it to be automated, then there's no money in the account to take care of that expense. So make sure that when you automate it, that you're setting up the date for the payments to come out the same time that you receive your payroll checks, so that the money is there to cover it. So that second account is automated. Why are we going to automate that second checking account? Because we don't want any late fees. It's easy to forget to pay something. It's easy to forget. So we're not even giving room for human error. We're going to automate it so that it comes out every month, the same time before the bill is due. And if the creditor will accept the credit card, and we have a cash back credit card, or we have a rewards credit card, we're going to use that credit card so that we can receive the cash back or the points. But remember this. This is very important, because I don't want anybody to get into credit card debt. As soon as you use your credit card to pay for it, make sure that you have your credit card payment automated as well. So as your credit card is paying that, you have an account automated to pay that credit card company every month as well. So make that a bill. Do you see how that works? So your credit card is paying it, you receiving points or cash back, and you also have the payment of that credit card automated so that it comes out of the account and is paid in full every month. Any questions about that? I want to make sure everybody is following that. Look at the chat. Okay, 5, let's see. Okay, very good. So I just share here, set it up and automate it. This is the system. The goal is to have each of these savings accounts and your checking account automated. This removes the chance of late payments due to human error. I just shared that with you. It may require you speaking. Now, this is something to think about. It may require that you speak with your local bank about setting up these monthly automated designations. So you may have to tell them that, look, I want all of these accounts automated, and I want each of these creditors automated. Or you can go through the creditors. If it's your utility bill, you can contact your utility company. They'll tell you how to set up auto pay. So a lot of these you can do online and attach it to your financial institution. So make your savings account a bill and make it automatic. So your savings accounts, once you determine how much you're able to put into your emergency fund to reach those 3 months and your long-term goal, whatever that cost is, you can automate those savings accounts and have that come out of your second checking, because that's where what? All of your bills and utilities fall. So that second checking account can now send money into those two savings accounts. And you determine how much of a surplus you have left over to send to those two accounts. But you want to make it automatic, make it a bill and automate it so that it's on autopilot and it's happening every single month automatically. Set it and forget it. I'm sorry, I'm going through the chat as I'm looking at this. Okay, no questions about, okay, very good. So here's an important note. I want you to alert your bank. This is very important. Alert your bank that you don't want them to allow you to spend more than you have in your account. My banker asked me that question. If you do not have it in your account, do you want us to pull from another account or you want us to reject it? I said, I do not want to spend, or I don't want the financial institution to allow me to spend any more than I have in that account, because each of these accounts are set up for a specific purpose. So if it's not enough in that account, reject the expense. So alert your bank that you don't want them to allow you to spend more than you have in your account. Automation will ensure that you are not incurring late fees, overdraft fees, etc. But if you're using online accounts, the ones we share, checking accounts and savings accounts, you're going to minimize those fees anyway, because those accounts don't come with fees. Now, here's how the system works. Let's go back over our system. I want you to follow this. Have your finances work on a monthly cycle to automatically disburse or send out money where it needs to go. Set up accounts to draw from your checking account. For example, have your online savings account automatically withdraw a certain amount every month from your checking account. So your savings accounts will automatically draw money from that second checking account that's used for bills and utilities. It'll draw a certain amount into each of those savings accounts based on what you set up. For rewards, tracking, and consumer protection, pay your bills using a credit card. I shared that with you. You receive consumer protection, and you also receive tracking and rewards or cash back. So use your credit card, but make sure the payment for that credit card is automated, so it's paid in full every month. It's a bill. The credit card is automatically, I just shared that. Any questions before I go into the homework? And we're at 7:58. Any questions before I go into the homework? So tonight, we set up our 4 financial buckets. Our 2 checking accounts. That first checking account is for all of our money. The second checking account is for bills and utilities, and what's left over for personal spending will stay in checking account number 1. Then we have our 2 savings accounts. The first one is our emergency savings account, which is for 3 months of our fixed costs, only focusing on rent or mortgage, utilities, car payment, car insurance, and groceries. 3 months of whatever that number is. And then our long-term saving goals account. And you have determined what that goal is. You've written it down, you've written it on your bank statement, and you will determine how many months you have to reach that goal. And that will determine the monthly amount that you need to have drafted to go into that account. Start small and grow big with your goals. So homework, I want you to identify your saving goal within 2 categories, your emergency savings and your goal savings. This is homework. Calculate how much you need to put aside for each account and make each savings account a bill on your money out list. Transfer all of your money into an interest-bearing checking account and automate your bills. So we're reiterating what I just shared with you during this presentation, but the homework assignment is for you to actually put these strategies in place. Next, I want you to automate all of your monthly fixed expenses, and you have those expenses there. Make sure the dates correspond with your pay periods. Do not give companies automatic access to your money. So do not give them a canceled check. Do not give them the clearance to transfer money. You want to be the only person controlling all of the money out or designation of payments. You're the controller. Do not give that control away. Next, request your employer to split your paycheck and automatically deposit your savings into your savings account. So some employers can do that. If your employer can't initiate this process, you can do it manually, but check with your bank about transfer fees. Make sure there are no transfer fees. And if you're using an online account, there shouldn't be any transfer fees for this. But research the online savings and checkings accounts that I gave you and the sites, and you will see whether or not they have fees for transfers. Next bullet, if your bank charges a fee to manage your transfers, be sure to start the transfer from your free online account. That's why I'm encouraging online accounts. Any questions? Do we have any questions in the chat? Okay. Well, we have no questions. That's the end of the presentation. I pray that each of you take this information and that you do your homework, because next week when we come, we're talking about a debt elimination plan. So we have these 4 buckets, and now how can we use these 4 buckets to start eliminating debt? That is the goal. So we're setting up our infrastructure with our 4 financial buckets, and then we're going to move into debt elimination, and then we're going to go into credit repair so we can leverage credit. So in this last minute, let me just close out. Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for all of the attendees. I pray, God, that this week will be a week of favor for them. Let the windows of heaven, oh God, open up and pour them out a blessing that they shall not have room enough to receive it. Let this be their year of overflow. I pray that they take this information, God, and that they will use it, that it will not just become a matter of hearing, but God, a matter of doing. And may they receive the rewards, God, of putting their financial structure in place. Let it bless them, their family. In the name of your son, Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen. All right. God bless your family. Have a good week.